If you leave me now, I will not live to hear the third bell. Claire Morgan froze beneath the pines, one hand clutching the torn hem of her silver dress, while the first mating bell rolled across Hollow Creek like distant thunder. Less than 10 minutes remained before the ceremony began. 10 minutes before every unmated wolf in the pack gathered beneath the moon arch. 10 minutes before Claire's name was called for the final time. Yet the stranger lying beside the narrow creek was losing blood faster than she could stop it. Before tonight, Claire had believed nothing could make her miss the ceremony. At 23, she had already endured 3 years of whispers about her faint scent, her silent wolf, and the humiliating possibility that no man would ever choose her. This was her last invitation. If she arrived after the third bell, pack law would mark her absent, and the future she had spent years hoping for would close without her. The stranger's breath caught. Claire looked toward the distant glow of the village, where lanterns shimmered between the trees. Music floated through the cold evening air. Somewhere inside the ceremonial hall, Madison Reed would be standing beneath silk banners in a flawless white gown, smiling as though destiny had already promised her everything. Claire looked back at the man. His dark coat was soaked from the creek, and a deep red stain spread along his side. His face was pale beneath rain-damp black hair, but there was something commanding in the sharp line of his jaw and the way he fought to remain conscious. Even wounded, he did not seem helpless. He seemed restrained, as though some immense force inside him was waiting for permission to rise. "Who did this?" Claire whispered. His silver-gray eyes opened. "It does not matter. It matters if they are coming back." A faint, humorless smile touched his mouth. "They are." The second bell sounded. Claire's heart tightened. She could still run. The ceremony grounds were less than a mile away. She could call for help, reach the doors before they closed, and preserve the one chance she had left. Then the stranger's hand slipped from his side, and his breathing weakened. "Claire, stop thinking." She dropped to her knees, pulled the silver ribbon from her hair, and pressed it firmly over the wound. The fabric darkened beneath her fingers. "Stay awake," she ordered. His gaze moved to her dress, then toward the distant bells. "You are expected somewhere. So are you, apparently. You do not know who I am. Right now, you are someone who needs help." Something changed in his expression. Not gratitude. Something deeper, almost startled, as though kindness without a price was a language he had forgotten. Claire tore a strip from the lower edge of her dress and secured the makeshift bandage. The beautiful fabric her aunt had spent months repairing gave way with a soft rip. There would be no hiding what she had done, no entering the ceremony unnoticed, no pretending she had not chosen a stranger over her own future. The third bell began to rise through the forest. Claire closed her eyes for one brief second as the sound carried past her, solemn and final. When she opened them, the village lanterns seemed farther away. The stranger watched her carefully. "You missed it." Claire swallowed the ache in her throat and tightened the bandage. "Then I missed it." His eyes flashed silver beneath the moonlight, and somewhere deep inside Claire, the wolf that had remained silent her entire life suddenly lifted its head. "Mate." The word moved through Claire like a breath that did not belong to her. She went still, her hands resting over the stranger's bandage as she listened for it again. For years, her wolf had been nothing more than an empty room inside her, silent no matter how often she begged for an answer. Now something warm and watchful stirred behind her ribs. The stranger studied her face. "What happened?" "Nothing." Claire lowered her gaze, afraid that speaking the truth would make it disappear. She checked the cloth at his side and noticed a dark shimmer moving beneath his pale skin. It looked like smoke trapped under glass. Her unease sharpened. "That is not a normal wound." "No, is it poison?" His jaw tightened. "Shadow venom." Claire had heard the name only once, whispered by her aunt after a royal messenger vanished near the northern border. It was rare, forbidden, and designed to weaken a wolf from the inside. No common thief would possess it. She looked at his torn black coat, his polished boots, and the old silver clasp hidden beneath the mud. This man was not a traveler who had lost his way. "Who are you?" she asked. His eyes closed for a moment. "Eli." "Eli what?" "For tonight, Eli is enough." A branch shifted somewhere beyond the creek. Claire turned toward the sound. The forest had changed. Even the insects seemed to have gone quiet. Eli forced himself upright, but his strength failed before he could stand. Claire caught his arm and felt heat through his sleeve. You need shelter. You need to leave. You already said that. And you already sacrificed enough. The distant music from Hollow Creek faded as the ceremony doors closed. Claire imagined the empty place where she should have stood. She imagined Alpha Grant crossing her name from the list, while Madison watched with secret satisfaction. The loss hurt, but it no longer changed what had to be done. There is an abandoned chapel about half a mile east, Claire said. Can you walk? Eli looked toward the dark trees. Not quickly. Another branch moved, closer this time. Claire slipped his arm over her shoulders. He was taller and heavier than she expected, yet he tried to carry most of his own weight. They moved between the pines, avoiding the main trail. Moonlight filtered through the branches and touched Eli's face. At once, the darkness beneath his skin spread toward his throat. His breath caught, and a low sound rose in his chest, not threatening, but strained, as though something powerful inside him was fighting to escape. Claire stopped. Eli, look at me. His silver eyes opened, brighter now. Do not come closer. I am already holding you. You do not understand what I am. Claire placed her palm against his chest. Beneath it, his heartbeat raced, then stumbled. Warmth flowed down her arm without warning. The shadow beneath his skin slowed. Eli stared at her hand as if it had broken every law he knew. Inside Claire, her awakened wolf whispered the same impossible word again. Mate. Then voices drifted through the trees. Behind them, and one of them called Eli by a name he had never given her. Elias Blackwood, you cannot hide forever. The voice slid through the trees with the calm certainty of someone who already believed the hunt was over. Claire felt Eli stiffen beneath her arm. Elias. The name struck a distant memory, but fear moved faster than recognition. Keep walking, he whispered. Do not answer them. Claire guided him through the pines, following a narrow deer path toward the abandoned chapel. Behind them, lantern light appeared between the trunks, pale and searching. Whoever followed did not call for help. They moved with the quiet patience of men who did not want witnesses. They know you, Claire said. They know the name I was born with. That is not an answer. It is the only one I can safely give you. The chapel emerged beyond a wall of cedar trees, its stone roof sagging beneath decades of moss. Claire pushed open the warped wooden door and helped Eli inside. Moonlight spilled through the broken windows. The moment it touched him, dark lines spread beneath his skin again, curling from his collar toward his jaw. He pulled away from her and gripped the edge of an old pew. Stay back. The venom is getting worse. It is not only the venom. His voice deepened, carrying a strange echo that made the dusty room feel smaller. Claire saw his hands tremble as he fought whatever was rising inside him. She should have been afraid. Instead, the awakened presence within her pressed gently against her heart, urging her closer. Look at me, she said. Claire, do not. It was the first time he had spoken her name, though she could not remember telling him. She crossed the space between them and placed both hands over his. Warmth passed through her palms, soft as sunlight through winter glass. Eli's breathing slowed. The shadows beneath his skin retreated, one dark thread at a time. His eyes remained fixed on hers. What are you? He asked. The question should have hurt. She had heard versions of it her entire life, always spoken with disappointment. Yet from him, it sounded almost like wonder. An Omega who missed her ceremony, she replied. Nothing more. No, his gaze lowered to their joined hands. Nothing ordinary could silence this curse. Footsteps approached outside. Eli turned toward a small door behind the chapel altar. Claire found a narrow stairway leading to an underground storage room and helped him descend. Before following, she scattered dry leaves across the opposite doorway, hoping the false trail would buy them time. Voices entered the chapel above. Search every room, a man ordered. Claire held her breath beside Eli in the darkness. A faint metallic glimmer caught her eye. On his palm was an old scar shaped like a crowned wolf. Eli noticed her staring and closed his hand. Then he pressed something cold into her fingers, a heavy silver ring engraved with the same symbol. Someone took this from me, he whispered. If you see a man wearing its twin, do not trust him. Why? Because he is the reason I am here. The footsteps moved closer to the hidden stair. Eli's strength suddenly failed, and Claire caught him before he fell. His eyes closed, but his final words reached her clearly. If they find us, tell them you never saw the king. The hidden stair creaked beneath a stranger's weight, and Claire knew the search had reached them. Eli lay motionless against the stone wall, his breathing shallow but steady beneath her hand. Above, boots crossed the chapel floor. A lantern glow slipped through the narrow seam around the cellar door. Claire closed her fingers around the silver ring he had given her, then tucked it into the torn lining of her dress. "There is nothing here," one man said. "Check below." The latch lifted. Claire pressed herself into the shadows and held her breath. Before the door could open fully, a sharp whistle sounded from outside. The men froze. "Riders on the eastern road," another voice warned. "We leave now." Their footsteps retreated as quickly as they had come. Silence returned, but Claire did not move until the last trace of lantern light vanished. When she finally looked down, Eli's eyes were open. "You should have given me to them," he murmured. "You keep saying things like that. Because you keep choosing danger. I chose a wounded man." His expression tightened, as if her answer carried more weight than she understood. Dawn arrived slowly, turning the cellar window from black to gray. Claire stayed beside him until the shadows beneath his skin faded. When distant hoofbeats approached the chapel, Eli forced himself upright. This time the riders wore dark blue cloaks marked with a silver wolf. Their leader entered alone and dropped to one knee the moment he saw Eli. "Your Majesty." Claire's breath stopped. Eli closed his eyes briefly, no longer able to hide the truth. The wounded stranger she had carried through the forest was Elias Blackwood, Alpha King of the Northern Kingdom. The rider, Noah Bennett, looked at Claire with open surprise. "She saved my life," Elias said before Noah could question her. "No one learns her name." Not yet. Claire wanted answers, but exhaustion blurred the room around her. Elias caught her hand before she could step away. "Go home," he said quietly. "Pretend this never happened." "Can you?" she asked. For the first time, the king had no answer. Noah led him toward the waiting horses, and within minutes the royal riders disappeared beyond the trees. Claire returned to Hollow Creek alone. The ceremonial lanterns had burned out. White ribbons lay crushed along the path, and laughter drifted from the pack hall where the newly matched couples were being celebrated. Alpha Grant Holloway stood on the steps, Madison Reed beside him in a flawless dress. "You missed the final call," Grant said. "I found someone injured. You abandoned your duty for a stranger." Madison's eyes dropped to Claire's torn gown. Or perhaps no one wanted her, so she invented an excuse. The gathered wolves laughed softly. Claire refused to lower her head. Grant removed her name from the pack record and ordered her to leave the main house before sunset. By dusk, she carried her few belongings to the cottage at the edge of the territory. Her Aunt Martha opened the door, took one look at the dark mark on Claire's palm, and pulled her inside. "Where did you get this?" Martha asked. Claire told her about the venom, the chapel, and the silver-eyed king. Martha's face lost all color. "That poison belongs to the royal court," she whispered. "The man you saved was not running from enemies beyond the kingdom." Her gaze shifted toward the northern road. He was running from someone standing beside his throne. 3 mornings later, royal horns shattered the quiet over Hollow Creek. Claire stepped from Martha's cottage and saw black banners rising beyond the pines, each marked with a silver-crowned wolf. Riders entered the village in perfect formation, their horses moving through the mist as every pack member hurried toward the square. At their center rode Elias Blackwood. He wore a long black coat fastened at the throat with polished silver, and no trace remained of the weakened stranger Claire had supported through the forest. Yet when his gaze found hers across the crowd, something in his expression softened for half a heartbeat. Then it vanished. He looked away as if they had never met. Alpha Grant rushed forward and bowed. "Your Majesty, Hollow Creek is honored." "I am not here for ceremony," Elias replied. His voice carried easily across the square. 3 nights ago, I was assisted by a woman near the eastern creek. Every woman who entered that forest after sunset will present herself." Murmurs swept through the pack. Claire felt Martha's hand close around hers. "Stay calm," her aunt whispered. "He told me to forget it," Claire said. "Kings often say one thing when enemies are listening and another when truth is safe." One by one, women stepped before Elias. Madison arrived last, dressed in pale blue with her hair arranged beneath a silver comb. In her hand, she carried a torn strip of fabric. Claire recognized it immediately. It had been cut from the lower edge of her mating dress and left in the pack washroom after Grant ordered her belongings removed from the main house. Madison lowered her eyes with practiced modesty. I believe you are looking for me, Your Majesty. The square became silent. She offered him the cloth. I found you beside the creek and used this to help you. Grant smiled with obvious pride. Elias accepted the fabric, but did not look at it. His attention remained on Madison's face. You showed remarkable courage. Madison's cheeks brightened. Anyone with a kind heart would have done the same. Claire lowered her gaze, but her wolf stirred inside her, restless and offended. Elias took one slow step closer to Madison. Then tell me what I said when the venom reached my heart. Madison's confidence faltered. You were barely conscious. I spoke clearly. You asked me not to leave. Elias's expression turned cold. No, a tall man in gray ceremonial robes moved from the royal party. A silver ring gleamed on his right hand. Claire's breath caught. It was the twin of the ring hidden beneath a loose floorboard in Martha's cottage. The man smiled politely. Your Majesty, the poison may have clouded your memory. Perhaps the young woman should not be tested so harshly. Elias looked at him without warmth. I remember every word, Victor. Claire felt Martha stiffen beside her. Victor Shaw, royal advisor. The man Elias had warned her not to trust. Victor's gaze moved across the crowd and stopped on Claire. Recognition flickered in his eyes, though they had never met. And who is that? He asked. Grant answered before she could. Claire Morgan, a troublesome Omega who abandoned the mating ceremony and returned with a story no one could prove. Elias turned toward her at last. The entire pack watched as he crossed the square and stopped only a few feet away. His face remained unreadable, but his silver eyes held the memory of moonlight, blood, and a promise neither of them had made aloud. Bring every woman to the hall, he ordered. The truth will be found before sunset. Then, so quietly that only Claire could hear, he added, do not trust the man wearing my ring. By noon, every woman who had entered the eastern forest stood inside Hollow Creek Hall beneath the watch of the royal guard. Claire remained near the back, aware of Victor Shaw's attention moving toward her again and again. Madison stood closest to Elias, still holding the torn strip of silver fabric as though it were proof enough to change her life. Alpha Grant addressed the room first. Your Majesty, I am certain this is a misunderstanding. Madison has always been known for her grace. Grace is not memory, Elias said. His silver eyes turned to Madison. What color was the poison beneath my skin? She hesitated. Black. Only black. Dark as ink. Claire felt the answer settle wrongly in the room. Shadow venom never held one shape. She had watched it move beneath Elias's skin like smoke searching for a doorway. Victor stepped forward, his tone smooth. Perhaps the king is asking too much of someone who acted under great stress. Elias did not look at him. Perhaps someone is eager for me to stop asking. The air tightened. Madison lowered the cloth, and Victor's gaze sharpened. Then he turned toward Claire. This Omega claims she found a wounded stranger, yet she returned alone with no witness and no evidence. She also knew details of the poison before the palace released any report. Murmurs rose around the hall. Grant frowned at Claire as though her silence confirmed guilt. Explain yourself, he ordered. Claire stepped forward. She could feel her wolf pacing inside her now, no longer silent, but watchful. I knew the poison because I saw it. Victor smiled without kindness. Or because you carried it. The accusation struck harder than Claire expected, but she refused to shrink beneath it. Elias's expression did not change. Describe what you saw. Claire met his eyes. It did not stay one color. It moved beneath your skin like dark smoke, sometimes silver at the edges. It spread when moonlight touched you, but slowed when your heartbeat calmed. A low vibration passed through the room. Elias gripped the edge of the table, and for one brief instant, shadow gathered behind his eyes. Several wolves stepped back. Claire did not. Look at me, she said softly, the same way she had in the chapel. The darkness faded. Elias's breathing steadied. Silence followed, complete and stunned. Victor's face tightened before he could hide it. Elias turned toward him. She remembers what no liar could invent. Or she knows more than she should, Victor replied. That alone makes her dangerous. Claire saw the trap immediately. If Elias defended her openly, Victor would know exactly how important she had become. Elias looked at Claire, and the coldness in his face returned with painful precision. Claire Morgan will accompany the royal party to Blackwood Citadel for questioning. Martha gasped. Grant bowed. relieved to see the problem removed from his pack. Two guards approached, respectful but firm. Claire held Elias's gaze as they led her toward the door. Outside, the royal carriage waited beneath the darkening sky. When Elias followed and stepped close enough that no one else could hear, his voice dropped to a whisper. "Forgive me." Claire searched his face. "For arresting the woman who saved you? For making my enemies believe you are only a prisoner?" The carriage door opened. Elias glanced toward Victor, who watched from the hall steps. "It is the only way I can keep you alive." Blackwood's citadel appeared at dusk, rising above the northern cliffs like a fortress carved from the night itself. Claire watched through the carriage window as iron gates opened and torchlight spilled across the stone courtyard. She had expected a prison cell. Instead, Noah Bennett led her through a quiet corridor to a chamber beside the eastern tower, where a fire burned in the hearth and fresh clothing waited on the bed. "His Majesty ordered that you be treated as a guest," Noah said. "Then why call me a prisoner?" Claire asked. "Because walls have ears, and some of them belong to Victor Shaw." He closed the door behind him, leaving Claire alone with more questions than answers. Near midnight, a soft knock came. Elias entered without guards, wearing a plain black shirt and carrying the silver ring she had hidden beneath Martha's floorboard. "Your aunt gave this to Noah before we left," he said. She understood it mattered. Claire took the ring, but did not put it on. "You owe me the truth." Elias moved toward the window, where moonlight touched the glass but did not reach him. 3 months ago, shipments of shadow venom began disappearing from the royal vaults. I disguised myself and followed the trail beyond the citadel. Someone learned what I was doing and arranged the attack near Hollow Creek. Victor. I suspect him, but suspicion cannot condemn a royal advisor. Claire studied the tension in his shoulders. And the curse. Elias was silent for a long moment. "It began when I was 17. My wolf carries shadow magic from an old bloodline. Under control, it protects the kingdom. Poison turns that power against me." He looked at her then, not as a king addressing an Omega, but as a man admitting the fear he had hidden for years. Every healer who tried to calm it made the darkness stronger. "You were the first person who reached me." Claire's wolf stirred at the quiet honesty in his voice. "I did not know what I was doing. That is what frightens the council." A sudden tremor moved through Elias's hand. Dark lines appeared beneath his wrist and climbed toward his sleeve. He stepped back. "You should leave." Claire remained where she was. "No, Claire. You brought me here because I can help. Let me." She approached slowly and placed her palm over his heartbeat. The warmth returned at once, flowing through her hand in a steady golden pulse. Elias closed his eyes. His breathing eased, and the shadow beneath his skin faded. When he opened them again, wonder had replaced pain. "Your mother could do this," he said. Claire's hand fell away. "You knew her?" Elias crossed to an old cabinet and removed a leather-bound record. Inside was a faded drawing of a woman wearing the same moon-shaped pendant Claire had inherited. Beneath it were the words "Last Healer of the Silver Line." "Your mother served this court before you were born," Elias said. "She discovered someone was using forbidden magic inside the palace." Claire turned the page and found Victor Shaw's signature on an order demanding her mother's removal from royal service. Her pulse quickened. "Martha told me she died from an illness." "Martha told you what she needed to keep you safe." A second document slipped from the folder. It carried a black seal and a list of witnesses who had vanished after her mother left the citadel. Claire read the final line twice before the meaning settled over her. The order had not ended with exile. Victor had commanded that no trace of the silver healers remain. Footsteps stopped outside the chamber. Elias extinguished the nearest candle and moved in front of Claire. The door handle began to turn. From the corridor, Victor's voice called softly, "Your Majesty, I believe your prisoner has learned too much." The door opened before Elias could answer, and Victor Shaw entered with 2 royal guards at his side. His expression remained calm, almost courteous, but his eyes went straight to the open record in Claire's hands. "A private archive is a dangerous place for an accused Omega," he said. Elias stepped between them. "She is here by my order." "Then perhaps your judgment has been affected by the same darkness that has troubled this kingdom for years." Victor lifted one hand, and the silver ring on his finger caught the candlelight. Claire felt the matching ring in her pocket grow warm. Elias noticed. So did Victor. For one suspended moment, no one moved. Then Noah appeared behind the guards with 3 members of the royal council. "The great hall is prepared," he said. "Every witness you requested has arrived." Victor's confidence flickered. Elias had planned this. Within the hour, the great hall filled with nobles, pack leaders, royal healers, and representatives from Hollow Creek. Alpha Grant stood near the rear with Madison beside him, both visibly uneasy. Claire remained at Elias's right, while Victor faced the court beneath the black banners of the throne. Noah presented the missing vault records, the false travel orders, and the twin royal rings used to open restricted chambers. Victor denied every charge. "These papers prove nothing," he said. "The king is being manipulated by a woman whose own pack considered her unstable." Murmurs moved through the hall. Claire felt the old shame rise, but she did not lower her head. Elias began to speak, then stopped. A dark pulse moved beneath the skin at his throat. His hand tightened against the throne. Claire recognized it immediately. Shadow venom. Victor had activated whatever remained inside him. The torches dimmed as darkness gathered around Elias like smoke. Several nobles stepped back. Grant pulled Madison behind him. Victor raised his voice. "You see what he has become. The kingdom cannot be ruled by a monster." Elias bowed his head, fighting for control, but the shadow spread across the floor. Claire heard frightened whispers behind her. Every instinct told the court to flee. She moved closer. "Claire, no," Elias warned, his voice strained. "You came for me when everyone else turned away," she said. "Now let me do the same." She placed her hand over his heart. The darkness surged once, then stilled. Claire closed her eyes and listened past the noise, past the fear, until she found the heartbeat she remembered from the creek. "You are not the curse," she whispered. "You are the man who tried to protect a stranger while you were dying." Warm golden light spread beneath her palm. Elias lifted his head. His silver eyes cleared. The shadow around him lowered, not defeated, but calmed. Then, before the entire court, the great black wolf formed behind him in a veil of darkness and bowed its head to Claire. Silence fell. Noah stepped forward with the final evidence. Victor's seal on the order that had targeted Claire's mother and concealed the stolen venom. Madison began to cry. "I took the fabric," she confessed. Claire was the one who saved him. Victor looked toward the doors, but the guards had already closed them. Elias rose from the throne, fully himself again. "Claire Morgan was never my attacker," he declared. "She is the reason I still stand before you." Then the Alpha King descended the steps, crossed the hall, and knelt on one knee before the Omega Hollow Creek had called worthless. No one in the great hall seemed to breathe as Elias Blackwood knelt before Claire. The Alpha King lowered his head, not in defeat, but in respect. "You saved me when I had no crown, no guards, and no name worth trusting," he said. "I will not repay your kindness by taking away your choice." Claire looked around the hall. Madison stood in tears. Alpha Grant could no longer meet her eyes. Victor Shaw remained silent between the royal guards as Noah gathered the final records for the council. For years, Claire had imagined being chosen before a crowd. She had believed that moment would prove she was worthy. Now she understood that her worth had never depended on a ceremony. "Stand up," she told Elias softly. He rose, but he did not release her gaze. "I came to Hollow Creek because I owed my life to you," he said. "I brought you here because I needed your gift. But I am asking you to remain because you are the first person who saw the man beneath the throne and the shadow beneath the man." Her wolf moved warmly within her, no longer a frightened whisper. "Mate," it said again, but this time the word did not feel like a command. It felt like an open door. Claire placed her hand in his. "Then ask me as Elias, not as my king." Something gentle entered his silver eyes. "Claire Morgan, will you walk beside me?" "Yes," she answered. Victor was removed from the royal council and placed under judgment for betraying the crown, stealing forbidden venom, and hiding the truth about the silver healers. The remaining council restored Claire's mother's name to the royal records. Madison publicly admitted that she had stolen the silver cloth, and Claire accepted the apology without pretending the hurt had never happened. Alpha Grant lost his authority over Hollow Creek after the council uncovered years of mistreatment toward Omegas without mates. Martha was invited to Blackwood Citadel, where she finally told Claire the stories she had hidden to keep her alive. In the months that followed, Claire reopened the abandoned Royal Healing Wing. Its doors welcomed every wolf, regardless of rank, scent, or strength. Elias visited often, sometimes as king, sometimes simply as the man who sat beside her after sunset and listened while she spoke of the life she wanted to build. When the next silver moon rose, a new mating ceremony was held in the Citadel Gardens. Lanterns glowed among the pine trees, and white flowers lined the path. Claire wore a simple silver gown repaired with one visible strip of darker fabric from the dress she had torn beside the creek. She kept it there as a reminder that nothing given in kindness was ever truly lost. The entire kingdom waited beneath the moon arch, but Elias stood apart from the throne, offering his hand instead of issuing a claim. Claire walked toward him at her own pace. When their fingers met, her wolf answered his with a peaceful warmth that moved through both of them. The first ceremony had closed its doors without her. At the second, even the Alpha King waited for Claire Morgan to take the first step.